What's up, War Rapport family? We are back with another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Rapport. Week 1 is in the books. Week 2 is coming up quickly, and joining me to talk a little bit about what's going to happen in Week 2 is one of my favorite guests, Brandon Marcello. Let me bring Brandon in here. Brandon, thanks for joining me, man. How was your Week 1 of college football?
It was good, busy. I was all over the country, Colorado, Atlanta, Clemson, Georgia, back home. Finally, a lot of delays out there at airports, but man, I was glad I got to watch football in person.
Before we get into Auburn, Colorado, how was that Week 1 over there? I know they ended up winning, but the game was maybe a little tighter than a lot of people expected.
Yeah, you know, the belief in Dion is very much still strong there, but it was the first game that wasn't a sellout under him. It was a Thursday night game, plus it was an FCS opponent, but when they were down in the first half, the fans were getting a little restless. You could tell they were like, okay, let's see something defensively. This can't be the same old story from last year. But, man, it's quite the scene there. Sidelines filled with guests and celebrities, and it's like the only person I wrote a story about all that going into the Nebraska game for them. But it's the only place like in college football where a celebrity can just fade into the background because everybody's paying attention to Dion and crew, and they're just kind of leaning against the wall, taking it all in themselves as spectators. It's quite the scene. And plus, I mean, Boulder's just a beautiful city anyway. It's an incredible city. As you can tell, I bought a Flatirons hat. I went hiking. I was like, you know what? I need a hat. But it's a great city. It's a great campus.
Yeah, I've been to Boulder one time on a business trip back in my corporate America days. A little granola for me, but definitely a nice city. Definitely a nice city. Let's talk about Auburn here. Auburn blew out Alabama A&M in Week 1. They dropped a 70 piece on them. Now, I know it was just an FCS school, same as what Colorado played, but Hugh Freeze's team definitely, I think, showed some improvement in Week 1. They didn't have a single game last year where they executed at that level. As a matter of fact, very interestingly, Brandon, after halftime, the announcer gets on the PA and says, yeah, so the next 2 quarters are going to be 10-minute quarters. And we're like, what? They can do that? So apparently the refs discussed it with themselves, went to the A&M coaches, and they took it to Hugh Freeze and said, hey, if you'll agree, we want to shorten the game because, you know, an incredible act of sportsmanship, actually. And Hugh Freeze agreed despite wanting to get his young freshmen some time in that game. But after the blowout, Hugh Freeze has quickly turned his attention to Cal. Now, this game was really close out on the West Coast last year. What do you think Auburn accomplished in Week 1? Did we learn anything about the Tigers here headed into Cal?
I think more than anything, that game provides them just an opportunity to get in a rhythm offensively and defensively. You know, I wrote about this earlier this week, and I hate to be negative, but like we got to stop scheduling FCS teams in the SEC. It's getting ridiculous. The average, including all games, not just FCS, but the average winning margin in the SEC in Week 1 was 53-5.
That's crazy.
We had what, 3 teams score 70 plus, 5 teams won by 60 plus points. I mean, what are we learning out there? The gap between the FCS and the SEC and the Big Ten has only gotten wider, and it's only going to widen even further with the transfer portal and NIL and revenue sharing. I don't know who it does a service to. At some point, we just got to go, hey, if you want to schedule like an in-state FCS team for a spring game where we're allowed to do that, maybe we do that. But stop scheduling FCS teams in the season. It's just not, it's not watchable television. Anyway, so
yeah.
Having said all that, Auburn was able to get in a rhythm offensively. Very impressed by the receivers, Cam Coleman, Keandre Lambert-Smith.
Real deal, huh?
Yeah, he's a real deal. And I think kind of the thing that surprised me a little bit is he's like he's a little bit faster and shiftier than I remember at Penn State.
Right.
Defensively, I think Auburn's going to be very good, but it's just so hard to read in. There are several teams it's very hard to like give like this is what I think this team's going to look like this season because of the opponent they face. Auburn was one of them. Arkansas, Mizzou, even they played Murray State, and it was just they did the same thing, 10-minute quarters in the second half, I believe. I think Arkansas did the same 10-minute quarters in the second half. But the one thing that still concerns me with Auburn is I know Peyton Thorne put up big numbers, but there were some underthrown balls, and receivers were wide open, so it's fine. But man, there's just things like that kind of makes me go, oh man, he's not quite the, maybe a top echelon quarterback in the SEC.
Hugh Freeze mentioned it after the game. He said that there were still some things that Peyton Thorne did out there that he coached him on, and he said, damn it, we can't do this year, right? So Hank Brown got in the second half.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and he threw a deep, like a 50-yard touchdown pass to Sam Jackson. And looked pretty good. He actually threw a
former Cal player there.
Yeah, former Cal quarterback.
Yeah, I wonder if Hugh Freeze is gonna just design a play or two just for him against Cal to kind of give him a little set.
Yeah, I think he's gonna get tricky there. Hank Brown also had a touchdown. I posted this on social media. I don't know if you saw it, but and Hugh Freeze responded. But Malcolm Simmons, he broke loose for like a 47-yard touchdown and almost dropped the ball right before he broke the plane.
I saw the video. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I posted the video and I said, I'm sure he got a talking to in film review. And Hugh Freeze replied and said, yes, he did. So it was an interesting week one there. I think there were some teachable moments there.
Yes.
But they can't have a repeat against Cal. Now, you went out and you snuck out of Cal with the win 14-10 last year. What does this game need to look like for Auburn against Cal on the Plains to show that he's still moving the program the right direction? And last week wasn't just a fluke against, like you said, an overmatched FCS opponent.
Well, I think Cal's going to have struggles scoring against Auburn's defense. They slow Jaden Ott, the running back there, who's phenomenal. Auburn wins this one easy going away.
He's listed as probable, by the way, Brandon. So,
really?
Yeah. So there's a chance he may not go, or maybe they're playing games with the injury report there.
Maybe so. But, I think Auburn's going to run away with this anyway by double digits. It's going to look a lot different from last season's game. I think offensively, Auburn's not say light years better, but they're much better than they were last year. Even against Alabama and A&M, you could tell. I mean, just the athletes that are out there at receiver in particular. And I know, just wait till you get Jarquez Hunter going too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's probably something they want to do against Cal, get him warmed up going to SEC play, so to speak. But
and he missed game one last year. So He came into that game kind of with slow legs, trying to get his bearings.
So I hate to summarize it by this, but I think Auburn wins in a blowout against Cal.
All right.
I think they might win by 3 touchdowns in a game like this. The matchups are just very conducive for Auburn all across the board when you look at it.
We're going to cut at the end of this in a few minutes. I'm going to ask you for a score prediction here, and I'll give mine. But going back to Peyton Thorne, Hugh Freeze decided not to go after a QB in the portal. They put their full weight behind Peyton Thorne. You had reported during media days that Auburn may even be saving money in NIL to do some things down the road. I don't know, if you meant 2026, but it seems like they're not done in this 2025 cycle. Trying to flip Deuce Knight, the kid from Melendez from Miami, decommitted, and there's a lot of people speculating that he's going to commit. They may have a 5-star. Naeem Offord was at the game, and on the Sam Jackson touchdown, you could see them in the background going nuts when Sam Jackson caught that deep ball from Hank Brown. So they may be saving some money here to try to push this to a second or third ranked class here in the 25 cycle. Yeah. What does Hugh Freeze need from Peyton Thorne in this one? Because he, if you want to show off your receivers, you need your quarterback to play well. So, what kind of numbers does Peyton Thorne need to put up here, man, in game 2 to show that last week wasn't a fluke and that he's not going to repeat some of the mistakes that he made last week that didn't cost him because of the opponent, but might cost him in a Power 5 game?
Yeah, give me 250 yards, no picks.
250, no picks? Okay.
Yeah, maybe just 1 touchdown. That's all I care about. And what the thing that's really underrated about Peyton is his ability to run. You know that. We saw it last year. I want Peyton Thorne to be a guy that gets me 35 yards a game on the ground. That would be my goal. We're not going to reach it every game, but if we can get 35 yards out of Peyton Thorne on the ground, get him to throw for a little bit over 200.
A few first downs with his feet. Yeah.
You're in a good damn space there because you're going to get rushing yards this year. You're going to be able to run the ball. That offensive line's really good. I think that in a game like this, just aim for that. And going back, you mentioned like saving the money thing. A lot of what I was saying about that was about the transfer portal stuff, like why they didn't go out and get a quarterback.
Yeah.
That he wants to reward the high school kids that are sticking around, for one, to get them better paydays down the road in year 2, year 3.
Okay.
But also, I mentioned this the last time I was on this program, they're making a push. So in December, not just these immediate kids are talking about, but in December, potentially flip some guys from some big schools.
All right.
In the industry, the coaching industry, back in late spring, early summer, the rumor going around was that there's some Georgia kids potentially that we're not even really talking about. But that was several months ago, as I was hearing from some coaches in the industry that are outside of Auburn. So at the very least, Auburn's got these coaches freaking out and chasing their tail going, I'm hearing Auburn's going to be doing this in November, December, or whatever, before early signing period.
Okay.
So, but man, Auburn is such a freaking great place right now, recruiting wise. Everybody knows that. And I mentioned this to you before, but once they start piling up some wins this year, it'll go up even further. Especially because I know everybody's focused on 25 this year, but they're building for 26 too.
They already got the number one recruiting class for 2026. Right. Yeah.
So I mean, they got the thing rolling right now. They just need to get some wins now, because if you don't like get like 8 wins this year, or maybe 7 or 8 in a regular season, then you might get some of those kids late for Auburn that are like, maybe I should open my recruiting up again. There's not a lot of kids that Auburn's got committed that are like that, but there might be 1 or 2. But if you win those games, as I said, the rumors out there, the coaches out there are freaking out that they're going to flip some kids late.
Yeah.
And as you said, challenge for a top 2 or top 3 class.
It's funny. Hugh says this about his own players here in camp. He says at some point the tape has to become the resume. And every time he says that, I think that about his program for potential recruits. At some point, the tape has to become the resume. And that means wins on the field. Otherwise, if there's no proof of concept, it's going to be really, really hard to continue to sell. Come here, I know what to do with your talent. So he's got to do at least some of that this year. I don't think anybody expected Auburn to win the national title, Brandon, but 8 wins should be a reality, because Gus poured in 8 every year like clockwork. Yeah. And you are supposedly bringing in even greater rated talent than he brought in.
Right.
With the backing of money openly spent. Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, we don't do this thing under the table anymore, man. It's right out there. So I think it'll be really interesting to see, what they do Saturday to help move that needle in that direction. Before we get out of here, Brandon, Give me your final score on this one. I've got Auburn 45, Cal 7. So I'm with you on the beatdown.
Damn.
Yeah, I think that this defense is underrated, and they play a lot better than a lot of people are expecting. DJ Durkin is a master of defense in the SEC. What do you got here? Tell me how much they win by and why.
I agree with the defense. I got 38-17. 3 touchdown win. I think that it, I can't imagine what the atmosphere is going to be like. Cal's not ready for that. Like my goal for Peyton Thorne in every game this year, give me 250 through the air. Don't throw picks. And let's see if we can get you 35 yards rushing to open things up a little bit. Scramble for me. Get me something when the play's not there. Don't force anything. Just get me something with your legs. Yeah. And but in this game, I think the running game is going to get cranked up for Auburn.
They didn't run it a lot last week. Yeah, they didn't run it a lot last week. And I think they saved something in the running game, Brandon. They didn't want to show anything, right? So I'll end on this story. Jarquez Hunter told his uncle and mentor, he said, hey, man, he said, Uncle, what if I score on the first carry of the night? And they laughed about it. And then on the first carry of the night,
that Cadillac Williams play, huh?
On the first carry of the night, he carried it 37 yards into the end zone for a touchdown. I want to thank you, Brandon, for joining me here today on the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find yourself.
Yeah, cbssports.com, and you follow me on all socials. Just, I guess, search for my name. That's it, man. I'm glad I'm sitting at home watching games this weekend because, man, last weekend was a whirlwind. I had water pouring on my laptop. I came back in the press box from the Clemson Georgia game. The air conditioner above me in the press box was just pouring water on my laptop. My laptop, thank God, was still working.
Oh,
but
goodness.
After all the flight delays and everything, I was like, this is perfect. I'm not even going to be able to write a story now. But
well, I'm going to be jealous, my friend, because Auburn has 5 straight home games to start the season, so I won't be able to sit at home and watch anything until about week 6.
Oklahoma one of those?
Yes, that is the last game of the 5-game home stretch. It's
Oklahoma's first SEC road game, too.
Yeah, and they play Tennessee the week before.
Oh, yeah. I'll be at that game, Tennessee. But, man, OU, anyway, I could talk all day football, but man, OU's about to find out what it's like in the SEC. It's a big test for them. I think they're up for it, but, man, what a stretch. You open with Tennessee high-powered offense against a motivated Josh Heupel, who's going back home for the first time since he was fired there, and there's some bad feelings. And then he got to go to Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium where, oh, my gosh, that's the toughest back-to-back opener for Oklahoma in any conference they've had probably ever.
Yeah, forever. So I know Hugh Freeze is hoping to give them hell. Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express powered by the War Report. We'll be back at you guys next week. Hopefully, Brandon will be joining me to talk about why we were right in our score predictions. We're out of here. But before we get out of here, if you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. Signing off, and as always, War Eagle.